Have you ever wondered about the stories hidden beneath the earth, locked away in the dark catacombs of ancient cities? The Catacombs of Palermo, located in the heart of Sicily. Some are dressed in 19th century finery, others in religious garb, and all of them are arranged as if they were standing in their very own gallery. Let's journey into the past to uncover the origins of this macabre marvel, a sacred burial ground in the dim light of the catacombs. These bodies seem to be silently telling stories of lives once lived, now preserved for eternity. Decided to establish a small burial ground for their brethren beneath the church of the Capuchin monastery in Palermo. This wasn't an unusual practice. Monks and religious figures and even prominent citizens requested burial within the catacombs. Bodies were stripped of their clothing and placed in special drying rooms where air and heat were used to prevent decomposition. Some bodies were even embalmed with aromatic substances to preserve their appearance. Over time, this led to the creation of corpses that not only looked preserved but, in many cases, were posed in a way that gave them an almost lifelike appearance. For the people of Palermo, being entombed here was a mark of prestige, a way to ensure that one's legacy would be preserved for future generations. These mummies were no longer just the dead. They are a reflection of the human desire for immortality. In many cultures, death was seen as a transition rather than an end. The church believed that the preservation of the body and the ability to view the remains of a holy person was an act of veneration. By displaying the corpses of saints, priests, and holy figures, the church sought to reinforce the idea of the sanctity of the body and the possibility of resurrection. While innovative at the time were not perfect, the burial of children, often in their finest clothing, offers a poignant reminder of the fragility of life. Often referred to as the Sleeping Beauty, Rosalia was only 2 years old when she died in 1920. Her father, devastated by her loss, requested that she'll be preserved and placed in the catacombs. Rosalia's body so remarkable is the exceptional preservation of her features. As the city changed, with its mix of influences from the Byzantine, Norman, and Arab cultures, a reminder that death was not an end but a continuation of their collective story. They offer visitors a rare glimpse into a time long past, providing both a historical and cultural experience that cannot be found anywhere else in the world. The eerie yet fascinating sight of mummified bodies, preserved for centuries, continues to captivate the imagination and curiosity of visitors from all walks of life. As the city continues to grow and modernize, the catacombs remain a key piece of its identity, a place where the past is honored and remembered. A living museum of the dead, the catacombs offered a glimpse into the lives of those who had helped shape the city. They were not just a place of burial. They were a means of preserving the stories of individuals who had helped build the foundation of this great city. And why do we go to such great lengths to keep the dead near us? These are questions that the Catacombs of Palermo answer in their own strange way. The embalming process, which included the use of formaldehyde and other chemicals, preserved her body so well that it almost appears as though she is merely sleeping. The hauntingly beautiful face of Rosalia has captured the imagination of visitors for decades, making her one of the most iconic figures in the catacombs. Many of these young bodies are displayed in standing positions, dressed in clothing that signifies their short-lived social status. The stillness of these children's mummies, frozen in time, evokes an intense emotional response from visitors. Beyond their cultural and religious significance, the Catacombs of Palermo also played a vital role in the history of the city itself. As Palermo grew and evolved over the centuries, the catacombs became a place of memorialization and reflection. The dead, preserved in the catacombs, became an integral part of the city's identity, representing both its persistence and its connection to the past. The sight of these young bodies, preserved as though they might wake at any moment, serves as a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the enduring desire to hold on to it, even beyond death. Over the years, the bodies have deteriorated, some of them displaying cracks or fading features. Despite this, the catacombs maintain an air of mystery and intrigue, drawing those interested in both the macabre and the fascinating cultural history that these bodies represent. The personal stories of the dead, the children of the catacombs, the tradition, therefore, reflected the interplay between faith, culture, and power, and preserving the body in its most lifelike state was a way of prolonging life, by mummifying their loved ones and displaying their bodies. As the centuries passed, the practice of mummification began to decline. By the late 19th and early 20th centuries, advancements in medicine and changing attitudes toward death led to the eventual abandonment of the mummification process. What was once a thriving custom of preserving the dead eventually became an eerie historical relic. The people of Palermo believed they were keeping the spirits of the dead close to the living, attracting scholars, tourists, and those curious about this strange ritual. Today, the catacombs still house hundreds of mummies, some of whom have been remarkably well preserved, while others have succumbed to the inevitable process of decay. It was an act of reverence, a way to maintain a connection with those who had passed away. They had become part of a larger social and cultural story. They became a display of wealth, status, and even the desire for immortality. The cultural impact and the fascination with the dead, a new practice began to emerge. mummification. But this wasn't the same type of mummification you might associate with ancient Egypt. The tradition of mummification and the strange preservation of bodies led to a fascinating cultural legacy, one that continues to captivate visitors even today. But beyond the obvious shock factor of the corpses on display, the catacombs reveal much about the cultural and religious attitudes of the time. Fascination with death and immortality. Visitors would see rows of bodies, dressed in fine clothing, standing upright. Wealthy families would request to have their loved ones buried here. The placement and presentation of the bodies were meant to reflect the individual's role in society. For example, priests were displayed in their religious attire, while noblemen and aristocrats were often dressed in their finest clothes, giving the impression that they were still alive, attending a grand procession or ceremony. The wealthy in particular saw this as an opportunity to preserve their status and reputation beyond the grave, hoping that their remains would be preserved in a dignified and permanent manner. The more money one had, the more elaborate the display of their body would be, or sitting as if they were merely waiting for the next day. In other instances, they were preserved in standing poses, almost as if they were merely awaiting the arrival of their next visitor. Some bodies even had their faces altered through the use of masks or embalming, making the corpses appear more lifelike, their expressions almost serene. The bodies of monks, nuns, and even children were meticulously arranged to reflect their status, profession, and personality in life. But these aren't mere skeletons. These were people frozen in time, whose presence still seems to haunt the catacombs today. The evolving role of the catacombs. The process was far less elaborate but highly effective, with the goal of preserving the body in a lifelike state, often sought to be buried near their place of worship as a final act of devotion. However, the Capuchins went a step further, are among the most unsettling and awe-inspiring historical sites in the world. But unlike other catacombs, this one doesn't just preserve the bones of the deceased here. The corpses are displayed as though frozen in time. Their lifelike postures, preserved faces, and meticulously kept clothing make these mummies an eerie yet fascinating testament to a bygone era. Over time, this subterranean space would grow into the macabre catacombs we know today. The initial goal was to keep the bodies of the deceased friars close to the living community, but this practice would soon expand far beyond its original intent. The preservation process, mummification, and the fascination with immortality. As you step inside, you are immediately hit with a sight of rows upon rows of mummified bodies. But how did this chilling tradition begin? How did the Catacombs of Palermo evolve from a simple burial site to a museum of the dead? The story of the Catacombs of Palermo begins in the late 16th century. The Capuchin friars, members of a religious order, instead of simple graves, they constructed a network of chambers and narrow passageways beneath a church to house the dead. By the early 18th century, the Capuchin catacombs had begun to grow in popularity. As more people from Palermo, wealthy families, aristocrats, the preservation of bodies involved the use of chemicals and a lengthy drying process. It was this lifelike quality that made the Catacombs of Palermo so unique. As the years went by, the Capuchin catacombs became a place not just for religious figures, but for the elite of Palermo. In some cases, bodies were dressed in fine clothing and elaborate gowns. As strange as it sounds, the Catacombs of Palermo began to take on a role that went beyond the purely religious or ceremonial. The Catacombs of Palermo, though a place of death, have become one of Sicily's most visited and enigmatic historical landmarks. The Catacombs of Palermo are more than just a place for bodies to rest. The elaborate displays of the dead in the catacombs also reveal the influence of religious and social norms during the time. The Catholic Church, which had a profound influence on life in Palermo, also played a significant role in this practice. The decline of mummification and the modern-day catacombs. Despite the decline in new burials, the Catacombs of Palermo remained a living museum of sorts. The preservation techniques used by the Capuchins. One of the most compelling aspects of the Catacombs of Palermo is the presence of children. Among these children is Rosalia Lombardo, one of the most famous mummies in the catacombs. Her preservation is a testament to the advanced techniques of embalming used at the time, but it also adds to the eerie atmosphere of the catacombs. The role of the catacombs in Palermo's history. For the people of Palermo, the catacombs were a constant reminder of their history and heritage. The catacombs also served as a symbol of the resilience of Palermo's people. Today, the Catacombs of Palermo are not just a place of death. They are a living museum. The catacombs also raise important questions about the relationship between life and death. How do we remember the dead? What does it mean to preserve the body?